And we are live. The streaming software told me, "Oh, you got 7 minutes. Yeah, are you sure you want to go live?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm making my own decisions. Thank you." Uh, Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 12 of History's Greatest Idiots, the podcast in which we take you back through the annals of history and give you all sorts of amazing lessons from stupid people so that you can learn from their mistakes and never repeat those mistakes again. But who we're kidding? We're human, and humans making mistakes is fun and entertaining. And we got some good ones for you today. Joining me as ever is my amazing co-host Derek. Derek, how are you doing, and how are things over there with you?
Things are fantastic. I'm wrapping up a full week of vacation where I did not much of anything. I worked on some of my screenplays, finished a short.
Great.
So yeah, I'm relaxed and ready.
Isn't that good? That's just like that best feeling. Like sometimes you come back from, I think it might be because I've done quite a lot of traveling in my life, and you come back from a holiday like that and you're like, oh man, I need another fucking holiday now. But like especially if you've been flying or something. But yeah, I'm really glad you feel like relaxed and stuff. There's something about like when you get to a certain age, just like stopping everything that you're doing, and then you realize that, oh God, I am tired. I needed this.
Yeah. It gets away from you and you're like,
yeah, you just
I'm
carry
fine.
on.
Yeah, I'm fine.
It's that male thing of like, oh, I'll be all right. It's okay. Just carrying on. You just accept it, and then you slow down or stop, and you're like, oh my God, I was tired.
Yeah,
I needed this so badly.
I had somebody I worked with reminded or told me I was like that, and they were like, "Hey, Boxer from Animal Farm? Just keep working, just work harder." That's me. And, now I've had vacation, and now I just want to rest more, rest longer.
I know. Yeah, it's I guess the real secret to life is balancing that existence, but like at the same time, like having a week off, even if it's like a long weekend, sometimes you can be like, oh, that was great. I had the long weekend and we went to the Cotswolds, which is like a very picturesque part of England. And that whole time I was like, I'm enjoying my sleep. And then we went and we had the week away with my family in North Wales, and I was sleeping all the time. It was great.
Just relaxed.
Just like going on the beach, having lovely food, and then just sleeping. It was fantastic.
That's what I want to do. I want to get to the beach.
To your 40s. Yeah, go on a beach, chill out, have some nice food, nice drink, and then just sleep. Maybe watch something on Netflix. Who knows? So you've had a really nice week off. I'm really pleased. Are things all right with everyone over in Arizona?
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, I haven't been around anybody all week. It's been fantastic. I have no idea how it's going here. Could be on fire all around me and I wouldn't know.
That's good. Is it you were able to detach yourself from the situation? So yeah, I had a similar thing. I've got like a 3-day weekend now. I've got to get a bunch of. It's not really through choice. Like on Monday, I have to go to the hospital to get a bunch of tests done because of Crohn's disease stuff. But at the same time, it's like, oh, I don't have to wake up at like X certain time in the morning, and like I can take the time to do something else while I'm waiting in a hospital and having loads of work done, because that takes it out of you. So I have the morning and the early afternoon to do that, and then I have hours in the hospital. So,
well, at least the first half didn't suck.
First half will not suck. The second half will literally suck blood out of me. So that's going to be fun. Lovely. Yes. Anyway, so Derek, now that you've had a nice, relaxing holiday, can you tell us who your chosen idiot for this week is?
Well, the time away from work got me thinking about hard workers and people working hard, and then that wandered me into sweatshops and all that good things. And I think it's safe to say we can all pretty much put aside any sort of political ideology and stand together to stop human trafficking.
Oh,
right?
Jesus, yeah.
Now, the thing is over here, when you say human trafficking, it automatically turns into a conversation about satanic cults, drinking the blood of babies, or sex tourism.
Yeah, or some sort of like illegal immigrant conversation, potentially, something like that.
It doesn't talk like it doesn't go that way too often, but I think it should. At least it hasn't in the conversations that I've heard or had about it in
Sure.
my life. It's always the wild ass combination of Pizzagate and sex tourism
Yeah.
and down here it's like MS-13 kidnapping ladies and putting them to work in drug dens and things like that. So I guess it's like
Jeez.
labor. But the human trafficking side of it, it's like a huge business, and believe it or not, like it reaches into mainstream retailers. And
Wow.
in
Oh,
this
yeah.
in this sort of in this story,
Mm.
it totally does that. Major retailers like Walmart, Target, J.C. Penney,
Wow.
some big American retailers took part in buying products from this gentleman's sweatshop,
Oof.
which brings me to the gentleman I'm covering today, which, let's see, he is actually responsible for he was the target of the largest human trafficking investigation in United States history,
Wow.
and was responsible for holding over 300 immigrant workers and indentured servants to work on garments and clothing.
That's
Now,
awful.
much like humankind from the beginning of human history, it's all about getting the labor force, human resources, profit.
Sure.
And you want to get others to do the work for you. And if you can get them to do it for free, that's the best kind, I guess.
Yeah.
Except for it sucks when you're the other people.
Exactly.
Despite the laws that we've created to try and protect against this, minimum wages, they still get around it. And this guy did it on U.S. soil. He's a South Korean businessman that was responsible for holding over 300 victims in forced servitude from 1998 to 2001. So it wasn't all that long ago.
No, it wasn't. And like for 3 whole years in a digital era, no less, which is kind of surprising. Wow.
And it's funny because it was in the digital era and it was a damn note that took him down, but I'll get to that. They were passing notes anyway. So most of the workers were Vietnamese and Chinese nationals who were lured to the U.S. With the promise of a steady stream of money that they could send back to support their families, start a new life, have a better life in America. And
that's how most human trafficking stories seem to start, I think. You know,
see, it sucks because you always want to do better. And it feels like it could be super easy to get tricked into it without realizing what you're doing if you're not careful. And there's some red flags that this guy throws out right away. The gentleman I have for you today is Kil Soo Lee, South Korean businessman and sweatshop proprietor that was sentenced to 40 years for his role in the largest human trafficking operation on U.S. soil.
Wow.
It all started out back in the 1990s when America was pushing real hard for American-made products, and it was kind of a gimmick to buy American. Look for that.
Yes, I remember that.
Made in America tag. Help the U.S. economy. Help the American workers and the American businessman.
Sure.
And it's easy enough. You go down to your Walmart or your Target or whatever retailer you shop at and buy American. Except for Lee was behind one of the businesses that was putting out clothing with a lot of those made in America tags on it. And he had this ruthless business plan that it unfolded in 3 steps. He built his factory on a remote island in American Samoa on unincorporated U.S. territory. So it keeps the eyes off of him a little bit.
Smart. Jesus.
And he's only about 2,300 miles south of Honolulu. So still within supply chain.
And cross-Pacific supply chains. You know, you're talking about a vital shipping lane there. That's
And he recruited the skilled garment workers from Vietnam and China, who were mostly young women. To guarantee the job, he required that they pay a down payment of as much as $6,000 for each one of the workers. So that's right. He got him to pay him to be his slave.
That's awful.
I'd never heard of that before.
Yeah. That reminds me an awful lot of when people are... Who's that baseball player who fled Cuba? and was like he was it baseball? I'm sure it was baseball. Anyway, he fled Cuba with like a boxer who was also fleeing Cuba and a couple of other people, and he had to pay like a bunch of different people to get him out of the country because it failed like 4 times. And then during his playing career, he had to be really careful where he was moving around, and his team had to hire extra security because he ran away from the people he paid thousands of dollars to get him to America, and they now wanted like 50% of his contract. I can't remember the guy's name.
And it's weird how we like let ourselves be pressured that way too. Even like this dude's a baseball player making tons of money, and he's got somebody that's like, hey, we're gonna do something, this, that, or the other thing, and you're gonna do exactly what we tell you.
Yeah, and like the FBI got involved, and people tried to track them down. He was like, "You won't find them; they're ghosts, and they can still threaten us." So yeah, that's. But I think you hear that a lot of like human trafficking when people are escaping to situations. We hear it a lot in the UK. I know Francis Ngannou, the current UFC heavyweight champion, had a similar thing when he was trying to get to the US, where he had to pay a bunch of dodgy people to get him to a certain point.
Right.
We get it a lot in the UK where people, various different nationalities, are paying thousands of pounds to, you know, gangsters on the coast of like France and, you know, kind of Holland and places like that, where they're basically paying thousands of pounds so that they can get across the channel in really shit boats, and a lot of them die on the way.
That
so
sucks.
I know it happens a lot.
Well, you know, and I guess if you look at it, a lot of the times with the southern immigrants from Mexico and Venezuela and South America coming up across into like Arizona are fleeing like gang violence, and they're paying coyotes money to get them over here. But this guy's saying that it's a job. Pay me for a job. And
yes,
I was kind of looking at it like, why in the fuck would you pay to get a job?
I know. I guess it's the promise of other things, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and they're desperate, and they're running away from bad lives, and they want to bring their family out of poverty in some countries where, well, poverty is just kind of the way of life.
Yeah, it's the original American dream, really. You know, you can thrive here, sort of thing.
And yeah, and honestly, though, if anybody's desperate and looking for work, just control your own destiny. And even in regular labor wage situations, just know your worth and
absolutely,
you know, feel good about yourself.
Yeah, quite
anyway,
right.
Back to this asshole's plan. So he built the factory in American Samoa in unincorporated territory so he could get away from it, but it was still on U.S. territory, so he could use the Made in America plan. He's recruiting these skilled garment workers from bad situations and getting them to pay him up front. And then when they got here, he put them on grueling schedules in really shitty conditions and paid them next to nothing.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is weird to be paid at all, but in this situation, like a lot of those, they pay them enough to be able to buy the overpriced stuff from their commissary, the the company store sort of deal, but on a real horrid level. When they talked about rising up or stepped out of line, he threatened them with violence, hit them with beatings. Some of them were starved. They were arrested. He'd have them deported. They were sexually assaulted and forced to debt repayment schemes for the ones, that couldn't pay up front. They got indebted before they got here, indentured servitude sort of thing. And all of that was surrounded by this gated compound with razor wire and guards that patrolled with plastic pipes.
Plastic pipes? So they didn't even have guns. They were just like... We'll hit you with a truncheon sort of thing.
But I mean, I'll get to a real bad thing that somebody did with a pipe here in just a minute. So the fence encircled the whole compound with razor wire. There was a curfew in place. A lot of the workers were malnourished, and some of the seamstresses actually stopped having menstrual cycles due to the living conditions and abuse. Hey. So some of the dorms lacked running water. They reeked
Mm.
of human waste and body odor. And he controlled all aspects of their daily life, including how much they ate and when they slept, when they worked, and they were expected to produce. And he maintained the control with beatings and deportations and arrests. And in case you're wondering, anybody, it's a sweatshop owner, Toastazoid. Yes, you already told
Yes.
him. The companies that Mr. Lee was pushing his stuff to were Walmart, and the specific label was Beach Cabana label, Target
Oh.
under the Pro Spirit label, Sears under David Taylor, David Pfizer Sportswear under MV Sport, and J.C. Penney under Arizona, amongst others. Um,
Oof.
the dark underbelly of that sweatshop came to light when one of the employees that was returning from a visit of coworkers that were jailed in another location dropped an SOS note out the window of a company car, and the note was found and passed on to the Department of Labor. Then
Wow.
they launched an investigation and levied some fines and ordered to pay them back wages. But since he was strapped for cash, this Lee feller, and he couldn't pay them, the Department of Labor wrote the checks. And when the workers got the checks from the Department of Labor for their back wages, Kil Soo Lee fucking took their checks and deported the ones that wouldn't give them the money that the Department of Labor had paid them.
Oh my God, that's disgraceful. That is awful.
Things started to heat up again. They were rising up against him. And in November of 2000, Lee ordered his guards to beat or kill any workers that weren't producing clothes fast enough. And a mass attack ensued where one woman had her eye gouged out with one of those plastic pipes.
Jeez.
Another man was beaten with it and lost his hearing, ruptured his eardrum.
Oh my God.
The word got out of those beatings, and in February of 2001, FBI agents in Honolulu launched the massive investigation that led to his arrest. And in 2002, later in 2001, they went on trial. In 2002, two of his immediate accomplices, a manager and a head garment worker, pled guilty to trafficking charges and were sentenced to 70 and 51 months in jail, respectively.
Okay.
And as the head of the entire operation, he was the third and last individual to be convicted on the case. On February 21st in Hawaii, he was found guilty on 14 out of 18 counts against him. And in June of 2003, the Justice Department announced that he was sentenced to 40 years in prison for his involvement in involuntary servitude, extortion, and money laundering. He's actually one of the few cases of an employer that is actually prosecuted for human trafficking.
Wow. That's...
yeah, it's kind of a dark story, but one unfortunate takeaway is that like nobody's been holding the major corporations accountable for their role that they're playing and being the final beneficiary of operations like Lee. And in the wake of those cases and criticism, American companies are distancing themselves from some of the manufacturers and vendors. But there's evidence that shows that some of them, including the Pro Spirit label, shipped the materials, and they were involved directly without vendors in between with this Daewoo factory for Mr. Lee. After his sentencing, the Attorney General Alberto R. Gonzalez said that human trafficking is a moral evil that is nothing less than modern day slavery. And today's sentencing concludes the largest human trafficking case ever prosecuted by the Department of Justice, and is another example for our commitment to protect the civil rights of traffic victims. After that case, they increased the prosecution on human trafficking. And since January of 2001, they've opened up over 400 investigations and prosecuted 215 traffickers, which it's surprisingly triple the amount of prosecutions that they had engaged in the 4 years before. So just in that 1 year, beginning of 2001, it went up after this. So if there's anything to take away from it, This dude's in jail.
Mm-hmm.
The government's investigating more, although
Good.
a lot of it turns out to be harassment and deportation of illegals that are just trying to, like
Yeah.
Sheriff Joe, the roundups of
Yes.
workers. Anyway, what I hope turns to be a positive end of this story here is that he's in jail, and more than 200 of the workers from his family from his factory were actually able to stay in the United States on special work visas and are actually still here making a life for themselves and doing well according to the Department of Labor.
Right.
And
Okay.
Justice.
So that's a good thing. Ultimately, that's really, really good. It's so sad. I have a big problem with the Department of Labor in this one. Someone was brave enough. The very fact that they had to smuggle a kind of a cry for help out of this compound, and that should have kind of raised some red flags with them. They should have been like, okay, this is bigger than us. This isn't just about labor. The fact that they're having to smuggle notes out kind of should have meant, right, we need to get the FBI involved in this. Like, first thing needs to be involved. The kind of, they could have seized his assets, I guess, and then like, right, we'll reimburse the workers for the money that you owe them if that was a possible thing, or sell the goods somehow and sell them at an ethical price so that these people could actually earn some of the money back from the profits, right? That would have made sense. But for them to just issue fines and then not like make sure that the people were given the checks, because like they must have known, like on the letter it must have said we're kept in a compound, we're not allowed out, we're barely making any money, like that shit. They should have known that wasn't
they
enough.
would have put that in the note.
You think so, right? Like we're in a compound surrounded by, we're basically imprisoned here.
Yeah.
The Department of Labor should have gone on site and like directly enforce that shit. And then if they got on site and they weren't satisfied with the conditions, they should have called in the FBI immediately. But it doesn't sound like that happened. It sort of sounds like they went, it's someone else's problem, here's a fine. You know?
And they waited for mass beatings and somebody to get their eye. They waited for somebody to lose an eye.
That's fucking terrible. That, like, you should, at that point, you have failed, right, as an institution to protect these people, the Department of Labor. So that's a failure for them, and they should be ashamed of their involvement in it, because they had a duty of care of these people and they completely failed in that duty of care. As far as this guy goes, 40 years is right. I hope he does not return to mainstream society. That is a really horrible thing. It reminded me a little bit about over 20 years ago now. John Pilger, a journalist, released a book called The New Rulers of the World, which was kind of like a collection of, it was a book. It was an interesting book at the time. And it was a collection of kind of articles he'd done and essays and stuff like that. John Pilger, just should be aware at the time, I don't know if he's changed now, he was about as far left as you could go without becoming Stalin. Like, even to a Welsh socialist like me, I was like, holy shit, this guy wants to burn the world down. And like he outlined a kind of a sweatshop that Gap were using. Yeah, and like you're the same age as me. You remember the stories of the Gap sweatshops and the places that people, I'm sure you do. And like he was saying that they were like defecating on the floor. He posed as like a retailer so that he could speak to upper management and see how they treated people. And they were like, oh, if you need a quick turnaround, we can just make them work. Like, they don't need breaks. They can just work and work and work until the order's fulfilled. Like, as if they're machines. And when that broke, when he broke that story, I can't remember who he broke it for, it destroyed Gap's stock value, reputation, and overnight people like me who read the article and found out about it just stopped buying all of their products entirely. And I've never bought anything from them since. It's not exclusive to Gap. So, there are a lot of companies that have taken advantage of poorly paid workers. I mean, even some of the retailers who are still around to this day are still using like Cambodian labor to make their clothes.
Well, I mean, look at the cruise industries even engaging in the labor of here's $10 for this 3 months, but we
Yeah,
fed you.
I know, and like it's funny. I should mention this as well. It's kind of, there are levels to this wherever you look, right? I worked when I was 18 years old. My first summer job after I graduated from high school was in an American summer camp in Pennsylvania for the I won't mention the name of the organization because I'm sure elements of it were probably illegal. The camp was fine. The food was disgusting and the living conditions were appalling. I was paid 18 cents an hour for my work. We got 1 day off, even though like it was a Jewish camp. So like obviously with a lot of the Jewish kids there, they didn't do anything over the weekend, but we still had to work, which I was a bit like, it's kind of hypocritical. But yeah, I made $350 for that summer.
Damn.
Yeah. And there were some people worse than me that worked in the kitchens who, at least we slept in cabins, right? Some of the people who worked in the kitchens slept in tents the entire summer, which is fucked up. Yeah, I know. They didn't have like ensuite facilities like we did. I mean, our ensuite facilities were disgusting,
right?
But at least there was an indoor toilet, So
yeah, you weren't like working homeless.
Exactly, yeah, which is essentially what they were. And unfortunately, all of the parents, because you got big tips from the parents at the end of the summer, they were like, "Oh, thank you for looking after my child. Here's $150 or whatever." And
nice.
You had all these kids, so like 14 kids, it eventually adds up, and you've got enough money to pay off some of your student loan or like save for university, and then like travel around the US and see a bit of the US, which is what I did. I went to like Chicago, New York, Boston, Pennsylvania, all of these great places.
Nice.
But yeah, but like it was because I was on a specific visa, which meant that they could pay me whatever the fuck they wanted.
Oh, that sucks.
I know. So, but yeah, this is a situation where wages and stuff like that and exploitation is still rampant. Modern day slavery still exists. It's still a big problem all over the world. There's a huge rise in it in the UK where people are essentially kidnapping people and making them work for them for like decades. These people are showing up like 30 years later. Like, I've been a hostage in this house for 30 years and I've just been cleaning the whole time. It's a Harry Potter situation.
Yeah, that's under the stairs.
so that shit still happens. But this guy, in terms of ratings, man, it's a solid 89.
Okay. Yeah, I'll take that.
Pure pure exploitation of the worst kind. So I have no problem with an 89 because he just didn't seem to care. He was just a bit of a horrible human being.
Yeah, he made them pay him to be his slaves. He took their money when they did get reimbursed for the money that he owed him anyway.
Yeah, and he kept all the money in house by having, like you said, the company store. So
yeah.
What, you want to buy a pack of noodles? That's $1.
Yeah,
isn't it like 15 cents or something? No, it's $1. So
it's a lot like jail, I guess.
Basically, yeah, it's like the commissary in jail, isn't it? Where people like they get paid peanuts and then they have to pay through the nose just to eat decent food because the prison food is so goddamn awful.
Huh.
So, yeah.
I think I know where we can make our clothes.
Yeah. Let's make it an industry. Oh, that shit still happens. It's not just America. That shit happens over here as well. There are like people over here. It's like a big thing is growing vegetables and stuff. So a lot of the UK prisons, some of them have got massive estates, basically. So they'll have like 6 acres of farmland, and they will farm and farm and farm, and this food will be sold to the community. But the people who have farmed it have been paid like £1 a day.
So yeah, God, it's weird how that almost seems a lot like slavery.
Yeah, very much so. Slavery.
Sorry to bring everybody down.
No, that's okay. It's new slavery. Same slavery, different flavor.
But we paid them, sort of.
But we paid them sort of enough below the minimum wage, but we don't talk about that. But anyway, from one terrible human being to another. Now, this guy is not on your guys' level, but He is the angriest human being that's ever existed.
Okay.
And I think you already know who it is. I think you have a very strong suspicion who it is. He also wrote, he
maybe.
wrote the most depressing work of fiction ever devised by a human mind in the history of existence. I'm assuming this also happens in France. I need more reasons to shit on them. It probably does happen in every every country across the world. Toasterzoid. I'd imagine there's even in like egalitarian states like New Zealand or the Scandinavia, there'll still be exploitation. So yeah,
if
everywhere
people can fuck people over, they will.
Yeah, exactly. So let me tell you about my guy. Let me tell you about my guy, the angriest person possibly in human history, the guy behind the most depressing novel ever written by a human being, Harlan Ellison, the angriest man ever. Not who you thought.
Not who I thought. I thought you were going with Charles Bukowski. That
would have been a good one. I didn't think of that. No, this guy's much angrier than Charles Bukowski.
Yeah, he's just drunk.
He was just a belligerent, wasn't he, really? Whereas Harlan Ellison just hates constantly. So have you ever heard of Harlan Ellison?
I have not. I'm interested
You're going
to
find
hear
this You're going to find this fascinating, I tell you, especially because Derek is an author. So this guy is, as I mentioned, very similar start to you. And like his career trajectory was really interesting. So let me tell you about Harlan Ellison. Harlan J. Ellison was born on May 27th, 1934, to a Jewish family in Cleveland, Ohio. The son of Sarita Nee Rosenthal and Louis Laverne Ellison, a dentist and a jeweler. He had an older sister, Beverly Rabnick, which was a married name, who was born in 1926, so 8 years before him. So quite a gap between kids there, actually. Usually, like in the 20s and 30s, they were just pumping them out once a year.
Right. Yeah, you got to keep them
need
close.
more help on the farm. Have another child. But yeah, I mean, this is going to give you an immediate taste of Harlan Ellison. His sister Beverly was born in 1926. She died in 2010 without having spoken to Harlan since their mother's funeral in 1976.
That's an estrangement.
That's a long estrangement. Shit. His family subsequently moved to Plainsville, Ohio, but returned to Cleveland in 1949 following his father's death. He would have been very young, like 15, 14 when his father died. That's really, really sad.
Yeah,
Ellison,
that'll be hard.
Yeah, that's an early trauma. We've talked about this a lot in the podcast. Early trauma, probably quite upsetting, growing up without a strong father figure and stuff like that. Ellison frequently ran away from home. In an interview with Tom Snyder, he would later claim it was due to discrimination by his high school peers. That tracks. It's Cleveland. Yeah. He's Jewish. It's the 1940s. Shit happened.
Ohio still sucks. I mean, I'm sorry for anybody from Ohio.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've never been to Ohio. I've heard good things. I've heard bad things. But yeah, apparently in the 1940s, if you were Jewish and you just lost your dad, it wasn't a great place to be. He had an array of odd jobs, including by the age of 18. And this is just by the age of 18. Harlan Ellison had worked as, this is a long list, tuna fisherman off the coast of Galveston, itinerant crop picker down in New Orleans, hired gun for a wealthy neurotic, nitroglycerin truck driver in North Carolina.
That's a job.
That's a living right there. He was also a short order cook, a cab driver, a lithographer, a book salesman, a floor walker in a department store, a door-to-door brush salesman, and as a youngster, an actor in several productions at the Cleveland Playhouse. That's a fuckload of jobs right there.
Yeah, it is, man. I mean, was he doing them? He had to have been doing some of them at the same time just to... What the hell's a floor walker?
I think that's like a kind of an undercover security guard. It's like plain clothes, sort of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. Toasterzoid has just pointed out Harlan Ellison's most famous work. I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream. We'll get to that in a bit. It was turned into a computer game later on, which is kind of amazing given how horrifyingly crushing the story is. In a 1947, a fan letter he wrote to Real Fact Comics became his first published writing. Ellison attended Ohio State University for 18 months from 1951 to 53 before being expelled. He said the expulsion was for hitting a professor who had denigrated his writing ability. And over the next 20 years or so, he sent the professor a copy of every single piece of work he ever had published.
I feel like I would do something like that.
Yeah. This motherfucker holds grudges. Holy
man.
shit. Yeah, like punches him out, gets kicked out, and then sends him everything he ever gets published.
Like
That's
pouring salt on it. Here's some lemon juice. Let's just rub
burn
that
it
in the
down.
wound there.
All right. Yeah, you can already see that he is an angry, angry man. Ellison published 2 serialized stories in the Cleveland News during 1949, and he sold a story to EC Comics early in the 1950s. I should point out that's EC Comics, not DC Comics. They were known as Educational Comics, and they were incredibly progressive for their time, including stories depicting kind of African-American astronauts and stuff like that. I think that's one of their more famous ones. A point here from Astrozoid. The most based human to ever exist. I think some of his detractors might argue that point, Toasterzoid. Holy shit. Ellison, yeah. During this period, Ellison was an active and visible member of science fiction fandom and published his own science fiction fanzines, such as Dimensions, which had previously been the bulletin of the Cleveland Science Fantasy Society, for the Cleveland Science Fantasy Society, and later Science Fantasy Bulletin. Ellison moved to New York in 1955 to pursue a writing career primarily in science fiction. Over the next 2 years, he published more than 100 short stories and articles.
Damn.
Shorts, that's a fuckload. This is where it starts to get like, oh god, this guy's going to be one of those writers. The short stories collected as Sex Gang, which Ellison described in a 2012 interview as mainstream erotica, so porn.
Hey, if porn's behind it, he's going to be a wild success.
Yeah, porn, New York, 1950s. He's going to make a shitload of money. He served in the U.S. Army from 1957 to 59. Thank you for your service, sir. His first novel, Web of the City, was published during his military service in 1958. And he said that he had written the bulk of it while undergoing basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia.
Hey, I went there.
You went to Fort Benning?
Fort Benning, yep. It's
Benning,
home of the infantry. Yep.
Holy shit. You were in the same place as one of the most celebrated and miserable science fiction writers in human history.
I could see why he would be miserable at Fort Benning, and he would have wrote some depressing shit there.
Yeah, he was already fucked up by the time he got there.
Yeah. So everywhere you go is uphill and in the sand there.
Pretty much, yeah. And I'd imagine after leaving Fort Benning, he was like even more angry than when he went in, potentially. And this time he's trained. So,
oops.
Not great. Yeah, he knows how to throw a punch now. Wonder if that'll come into play. After leaving the army, he relocated to Chicago, where he edited Rogue magazine. Ellison moved to California in 1962 and began selling his writing to Hollywood. He co-wrote the screenplay for The Oscar, 1966, starring Stephen Boyd and Elke Sommer. Sommer, that's a very German name. He's like George Carlin's long-lost twin. Yeah, although George Carlin was like if he knew you and he liked you, you were like salt of the earth to him, but it doesn't seem Harlan Ellison had many friends. Ellison also sold scripts to many television shows, The Loretta Young Show, using the name Harlan Ellis, The Flying Nun, Burke's Law, Route 66, The Outer Limits, Star Trek, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Chimeran Strip. Was it Cimmerian Strip? I don't know. And the Alfred Hitchcock Hour, which that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a nice.
Dude, he's busy. That's like those are good shows too.
Why are you so angry, Harlan? You write such good novels. That's my Hitchcock. Ellison's screenplay for the Star Trek episode "The City on the Edge of Forever" has been considered the best of the 79 episodes in the series by multiple different outlets. That's quite a compliment for original Star Trek, because that series has kind of been elevated to the level of like high art in the television world because of some of the themes it dealt with.
Oh,
So
yeah.
for multiple different outlets to say Harlan Ellison wrote the best ever episode, it's quite a compliment. I
That's
think.
huge. Now I'm happy to be be this guy. I'll be
Yeah.
angry. What do I got to do?
Yeah. How many people do I have to punch? The answer to that is lots. In 1965, he participated in the second and third Selma to Montgomery marches led by Martin Luther King. Good lad.
Yeah.
Good man. Yeah, he is. Let me just point this out. Harlan Ellison is a massive arsehole, but he's also like, he believes in absolute equality for everyone. And he was violently opposed to anyone who wasn't in his camp, literally. So good for him. In 1966, in an article that Esquire magazine later named as the best magazine piece ever written, thanks Esquire, the journalist Gay Talese wrote a profile of Frank Sinatra. The article, entitled "Frank Sinatra Has a Cold," definitely sounds like the best magazine article ever written. Briefly describes a clash between Sinatra and a young Harlan Ellison, in which the crooner took exception to Ellison's boots during a billiards game. Harlan Ellison basically showed up looking like a hobo. And
okay.
Frank was like, "Yeah, you can't come and play billiards with us, you fucking homeless person." And Harlan was just like, "I'm gonna fuck you, I'm fucking kill you." This angry little man.
Did he punch Frank Sinatra?
He went for it. But nobody punched Frank Sinatra unless you're like Joe Kennedy, who, like, I think there was a rumor that he slapped him because of like involvement with the mob, or like the mob had fucked up part of the Kennedy campaign or something. Apparently, Joe Kennedy slapped him. I'd heard that. I
thought it was
true.
Joe Colombo.
Yes, there was that as well.
Him.
Yeah. Nobody punched Frank Sinatra unless they were members of the mob, and then in which case they kind of had a lot of involvement with Frank Sinatra's career. So slap away, boys. Ellison was hired as a writer for Walt Disney Studios.
Wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that doesn't seem like a good fit.
Yeah. Remember what he used to publish in New York?
Yeah.
Don't know if this is going to work out.
He's an angry porn miser. Let's go to Disney.
Yeah. He was fired on his first day after Roy Disney overheard him in the studio commissionary joking about making a pornographic animated featuring Disney cartoon characters. He also, when Roy confronted him about this, he also threatened to draw a dick in every fifth frame if he could get hold of the footage. Which is like, I think this is probably the start of the Disney porn urban myth thing that goes around.
Yeah, right.
Where, like,
sex in the clouds.
Yeah, all of that. Like, I think a lot of that probably starts with this Harlan Ellison story where he shows up on Disney. He's like, "Wow, I'm going to make so much money. I'm going to write a bunch of porn for Disney characters." And like, get the fuck off the site in front of Roy Disney of all people.
You're making me like this guy a lot.
I know, he's hilarious. Ellison continued to publish short fiction and non-fiction pieces in various publications, including some of his best-known stories. Repent Harlequin, Said the TikTok Man. That's a very 60s name. It's a celebration of civil disobedience against a repressive authority. It's vital reading, but it's dark.
He needs to work on his titles.
He does. Although this one is like, it sticks in the mind. Let's talk about his most famous and probably greatest ever work, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Now that title, it makes you think, ooh, what the fuck is that about?
Yeah.
You know, that grabs your attention. It was written in 1967. It's a story where 5 humans are tormented by an all-knowing computer throughout eternity. The story was the basis for a 1995 computer game, which Toasterzoid has played recently. Ellison participated in the game's design and provided the voice of the god computer AM. So he was the repressive AI in the computer game, which is amazing. So we have to talk about it. Some people it's widely considered the most depressing thing ever written by a human being in history. Not just like most depressing book. It's the most depressing anything that anyone has ever written, including like I fucking hate the world diary entries. Like, this trumps all of those. This is how depressing it is. But other people consider it a triumph of the human will in the spirit of the face of insurmountable odds. So no
Okay.
matter how bleak existence is, humanity will triumph because it can. But man, it's a slog. Holy shit. Let me tell you about the plot. In a dystopian future, the Cold War has degenerated into a brutal world war between the United States, the Soviet Union, and China, which is very 1984. But
God, that feels familiar right now.
doesn't it? Holy shit, we're there. Who have each built an Allied master computer, or AM, to manage their weapons and troops. One of the AMs eventually acquires self-awareness, and after assimilating the other two AMs, takes control of the conflict, giving way to a mass genocide operation that almost completely ends mankind. Now that is basically Terminator.
Yeah,
Right? That's
I think
1967, and he's just written the opening to Terminator. We'll
solid. Wait, so is this real? AM stands for, you said, asshole master computer?
It changes. It has multiple different names. So AM so it takes control of the conflict, giving rise to a vast genocide operation that almost completely wipes out mankind. 109 years later, AM has left only 4 men and 1 woman alive and keeps them in captivity within an endless underground housing complex, the only habitable place left on Earth. AM derives its sole semblance of pleasure from torturing the group. To disallow the humans from escaping its torment, AM has rendered the humans virtually immortal and unable to commit suicide.
That sucks.
That is dark as fuck as well. The machines,
yeah, that too.
Yeah, that's just it's so messed up. The machines are each referred to as AM, which originally stood for Allied Master Computer, but has changed to Adaptive Manipulator, and later, after gaining sentience, Aggressive Menace, or Asshole Master Computer, which is more accurate. It finally refers to itself purely as AM, referring to the phrase "I think, therefore I am." So AM.
Oh, nice.
So,
this game works in some clever things there.
Yeah, he's getting Descartes in there. That's really clever. Good for you, my man. Get some Latin Descartes and stuff in there. The story's narrative begins with AM, or AM, projecting a hologram of Gorister, one of the 5 humans, to the other humans, hanging upside down, dripping blood, and unresponsive. The real Gorister joins the group to their surprise, and they realize it was another one of AM's illusions. Nimdok this is another character. They've all got kind of odd names, most of them anyway, except like Steve and Brian and shit like that. Has the idea that there is canned food somewhere in the Great Complex. The humans are always near starvation under AM's rule, and any time they're given food, it's always disgusting meal, and they have real difficulty eating it because
like summer camp.
Yeah, it's like what I did in Pennsylvania. Because of their great hunger, the humans are coerced into making the long journey to the place where the food is supposedly kept, the ice caves. Along the way, the machine provides foul sustenance, sends horrible monsters after them, emits ear-splitting sounds, and blinds one of the characters when they try to escape. Yeah, I'm skipping over a lot of the story here, but it's basically more misery. And one of the characters, Benny, got turned into a monkey. Yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, but monkeys kick ass.
Yeah, not that kind. On more than one occasion, the group is separated by AM's obstacles. At one point, the narrator, Ted, is knocked unconscious and begins dreaming. He envisions the computer, anthropomorphized, standing over a hole in his brain, speaking to him directly. Based on this nightmare, Ted comes to the conclusion about AM's nature, specifically why it has so much contempt for humanity despite its abilities. It lacks the sapience to be creative or the ability to move freely. It wants nothing more than to exact revenge on humanity by torturing the last remnants of the species that created it. The group reaches the ice caves, where indeed there is a pile of canned food. The group is overjoyed to find them, but is immediately crestfallen to find that they have no means of opening them, and they're so weak from starvation that they can't open them.
Damn.
I know, so dark. In a final act of desperation and sheer primal hunger, Benny attacks Gorister and begins to gnaw at the flesh on his face. Ted,
Ow.
in a moment of clarity, realizes their only escape is through death. He seizes a stalactite made of ice and kills Benny and Gorister. Ellen, the only female in the story, realizes what Ted is doing and kills Nimdok before being killed herself by Ted. Ted is stopped by Am before he can kill himself. Am, unable to return Ted's 4 companions to life, focuses all its rage on Ted.
Ooh.
The story flashes forwards hundreds of years later, and Am has slowly transformed Ted into a great soft jelly thing with no bones, incapable of causing itself any harm, and Am constantly alters his perception of time to deepen his anguish. Ted, however, is grateful that he was able to save the others from further torture. Ted's closing thoughts end with the sentence that gives the story its title: I have no name, no mouth, and I must scream.
Wow.
Yeah, he wrote
Damn.
that.
I'm impressed. Now I gotta see.
Yes.
I feel dumb sometimes because I feel like I should know this. That sounds fantastic. That was like some killer body horror right there.
That is, yeah, it's like Cronenberg level
Yeah.
craziness right there. And like anything you can think of in terms of like modern horror, sci-fi horror, a lot of that comes from Harlan Ellison's work, particularly I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. It's so dark, but I actually agree with the triumph of the human spirit aspect of that, where
Yeah.
they're like, we can take destiny in our own hands, even if it is just by doing this thing that's so horrifying. But it's either that or we stay in this terrifying existence for the sole purpose of amusing this evil, menacing thing. So,
Wow.
so dark. He's also, I mean, he's written a bunch of like kind of semi-famous stories. Another kind of semi-famous story of his, A Boy and His Dog, examines the nature of friendship in a violent and post-apocalyptic world, and was made into the 1975 film with the same name, starring a very young Don Johnson.
Okay. I feel like I've seen that.
I have too. I have seen that film. It's fucking brilliant. It's dark, and it has the most disturbing ending to any film I've seen, except for maybe Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which
I don't know if I've seen that one. Okay, A Boy and His Dog. The dog talks, right? It's like
dog talks. Yeah,
telepathic.
he can hear it in his mind.
Yeah.
So he can hear
Doesn't
the
it
dog
open
talking.
with
Yeah.
like a brutal scene?
Yep. Yeah, it does. And it ends with an equally brutal scene, but it's played for like laughs. And I'm like, oh, I love you, buddy. Yay. And like, holy shit. You see what you guys have just done? Yeah, and so this is quite dark. I recommend that film. It's 1975. It's super low budget. You haven't seen The Mist. Yeah, I've seen The Mist. That does have a dark ending. I would argue that Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer is darker. If you haven't seen Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, it was banned in a lot of places. It's kind of like the big breakthrough of, oh god, who's the guy that does all of those James Gunn films now, and who is like Yondu in Guardians of the Galaxy?
I don't know that name.
He was in Mallrats. He was the villain, the bad guy in Mallrats, the owner of the mall. I can't remember his name. He's in like every
the bald guy?
Yeah, the bald guy. Yeah, you know who I mean, right? He's been in loads of stuff over the years. He got his big break in Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. He's Henry. Henry, the Portrait of a Serial Killer is one of the darkest films I've ever seen. It has, without a shadow of a doubt, the darkest ending to any film I've ever seen, because at the moment, leading up to this end, you think, oh my God, is this redemption? Has this character come from being a serial killer and not like a kind of a Dexter? Oh, you know, there's charisma there. Like he's trying to be like a good father to these, like, and he's trying to overcome. It's like, no, Henry does not care. He kills, and that's it. And at the moment, towards the end of the film, you're like, oh my God, is this a moment of redemption? And then you're like, no, it's actually the exact opposite. It's completely, yeah,
See,
it was him using his skills to get what he wanted. So,
well, yeah, I don't know. Sometimes if they surprise you with an ending
yeah,
that's just horrific, it's
yeah,
even better than the happy ones.
exactly. It completely subverts the kind of the typical Hollywood thing where it's like this terrible person is redeemed, and at the end of the film they've gone through like that journey where they've
Yeah,
become a better person and they're a complete human being. Like, no, this guy is a serial killer and he will continue to murder until he's caught or dies. So
yeah, that's good. That's kind of how I end the one that I'm working on right now.
there you go. That's the
Shit's
kind of
still
ending you can
bad.
occasionally get in, yeah. So, I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream, A Boy and His Dog, and Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, and The Mist. I'll give you credit for The Mist, Toasterzoid. Definitely some of the most disturbing endings ever. If you guys are in the mood for a depressing horror kind of run of films, definitely binge those. My God. So let's get back to Harlan Ellison now. In 1967, Ellison edited the Dangerous Visions collection, which attracted special citation at the 26th World SF Convention for editing the most significant and controversial SF book published in 1967. No surprise there. In his introduction, Isaac Asimov described it epitomizing a second revolution in science fiction as science receded and modern fiction techniques came to the fore. That's quite the praise
Yeah, it is.
from
That's
like
huge.
the one of the godfathers of science fiction. From 1968 to 70, Ellison wrote a regular column on television for the Los Angeles Free Press titled "The Glass Teat," which is a great title for a column. Ellison's column examined the television's impact on the politics and culture of the time, including its presentation of sex, politics, race, the Vietnam War, and violence. The essays were collected in 2 anthologies, The Glass Teat, Essays of Opinion on Television, followed by The Other Glass Teat. This reminds me a little bit of what Charlie Brooker has since done with Screen Wipe, which you guys probably aren't familiar with those series, but Charlie Brooker is the guy who created Black Mirror.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And before that, like Charlie Brooker started out as a computer games journalist, and then eventually he created a website called tvgohome.com, which was one of the funniest, darkest like spoof of TV listings like magazines that you can get.
Right.
There was one thing called the Extreme Olympics like winter edition where he had a bunch of really stupid sports where like one of them was like it was done in the way of like the style of a TV listings thing. So it was 7:15 wolf fucking.
There you go.
7:30 the world's strongest and stupidest men. Which it was like a series of challenges where men carry, what was it? He said, I'm just trying to remember it now off the top of my head. Carry a filing cabinet full of coal using only their eyelids. And
Oh,
it was the weirdest thing. So then he moved on from TV Go Home and he started doing columns for the Guardian newspaper for television. He was their TV correspondent, very much influenced by Harlan Ellison. And he then did Screen Wipe and TV Wipe, which were like satirical takedowns of what television had become, the influence it had had on society. But it was all done through the prism of his intense comedic lens. And then
okay.
after that, these were a huge success. If you ever get a chance to go on YouTube, type in Charlie Brooker Screen Wipe, and you'll see some amazing things. Especially there's one episode where he does on the depiction of wealth in television. It's one of the most incredible things where he's like sitting around watching people act out what they've seen on television, and it's him just in a bunch of homeless people just watching these people like dance in a nightclub and stuff, and they're eating like rat that's been roasted over an open fire or something. Yeah, so he did that, and then he did Black Mirror, and that's like become this huge cultural touchstone.
I didn't even know what the fuck I was watching when I started that one.
I know. It's like it was unlike anything else. But yeah, so Harlan Ellison is the kind of the groundwork for that kind of dark columnist writing about television and like examining its impact on society. And he did that in the late 60s and 70s when people were starting to think, maybe this isn't so great. So
And yet
yeah,
we just left it go.
we just like let it run. Just
Yeah.
like keep going. No progress, no checking up on it, especially TV news. Ellison served as a creative consultant on the 1980s version of the Twilight Zone science fiction series and Babylon 5. I
Damn.
know.
This
This
guy's done
guy,
all kinds of good shit.
I know. He's incredible. As a member of the Screen Actors Guild, he had voiceover credits for shows including The Pirates of the Dark Water, Mother Goose and Grimm, Space Cases, Phantom 2040, and Babylon 5, as well as making an on-screen appearance in Babylon 5's episode The Face of the Enemy. A frequent guest on the Los Angeles science fiction fantasy cult radio show Hour 25, hosted by Mike Hodel. Ellison took over as host for after Hodel died. Ellison's tenure was from May 1986 to June 1987. That's like the longest he's ever held down a job without like punching someone or something.
Without smacking somebody.
Yeah. Ellison's short story, The Man Who Rowed Christopher Columbus Ashore, in 1992, was selected in inclusion in the 1993 edition of the Best American Short Stories. In 2014, Harlan Ellison made a guest appearance on the album Finding Love in Hell by the stoner metal band Leaving Babylon, reading his piece The Silence, originally published in Minefields as an introduction to the song Dead to Me. So Harlan Ellison and Christopher Lee out there making metal albums in their 80s. That's fucking amazing.
That's what's up. Yeah. See, now you're making me like him even more.
Yeah, exactly. Also in 2007, there's an episode of The Simpsons where Bart and Milhouse go to a comic book convention and they meet like Alan Moore and I think what's his name? Oh God, the kind of the he's in everything now. I can't remember the guy's name, but he wrote the Sandman comics. He's a big name. I can't remember his name. It's going to drive me mad. And also Harlan Ellison was featured on an episode of The Simpsons. So first of all, Alan Moore, also a big curmudgeon, responsible for The Watchmen and V for Vendetta and From Hell and, you know, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all of the, like, honestly, best living British author in my book. But he's also a miserable bastard.
Who's like, that's just how you do it.
Yeah. And also, if you Google Alan Moore, that isn't Rasputin, that's Alan Moore. That's what he looks like. And like Alan Moore's like joking, because the joke is Milhouse approaches him and says, "Oh, Mr. Moore, will you sign my copy of Watchmen Babies?" And he's like, "Oh, they've done it again, those bastards," because like he never accepts any money from Hollywood for any of the adaptation for his films. And he's like, "I don't want any money. And if you put my fucking name on that film, I'm suing you." So Alan Moore is in this episode of The Simpsons, and he's not even the most miserable person in the episode because Harlan Ellison is in there. And they tease Harlan Ellison about the Terminator. And he just, like, apparently getting him to say anything that wasn't a swear word in the booth was a real fight. So he's got like 2 lines in the whole episode, and it's just him screaming. So, so Harlan Ellison is an angry man, even in The Simpsons. So yeah, let's move on to his personal life, and then we'll get to the real reason I chose this guy. Okay. Personal life. Ellison married 5 times. Each relationship ended within a few years, except the last one, which he's so old at that point. It's like, why bother with the effort? You know, his first one, out. Yeah, I'm just gonna put up with it at this point. His first wife was Charlotte Steen, whom he married in 1956. They divorced in 1960, and he later described the marriage as 4 years of hell, as sustained as the whine of a generator.
Wow. Dude, so that's where he came up with his... Oh, no, he had already made that character.
Yeah. And it reminded me a bit of Charlie Chaplin, because when Charlie Chaplin was asked about his second marriage by his biographer, his response was, "I hated the bitch." It's like, well, why were you married to her?
Yeah.
Okay. Later that year, he married Billy Jace Sanders. They divorced in 1963, so that one lasted 3 years. His 1966 marriage to Loretta Patrick lasted only 7 weeks.
Wow. This guy's like Ross from Friends.
Fuck me, that's terrible. In 1976, he married Laurie Horowitz. He was 41 and she was 19. And he later said of the marriage, "I was desperately in love with her, but it was a stupid marriage on my part." Yeah, he's going for the fucking record. They were married for 8 months, by the way, so slightly longer than his third marriage.
Yeah, he's not going the right direction. Started with
No,
4, went to 3,
yeah, it's really, really
hit rock
bad.
bottom, bounced off a
Yeah.
little bit.
But that's I've got to say, amazing insight from Harlan Ellison, being able to accept responsibility for something. It was a stupid marriage on my part. Might be the only time he accepts any responsibility in his life. He and Susan Toth married in 1986, and they remained together, living in Los Angeles until his death 32 years later. Susan died in August 2020, so one stuck. He just needed to find that right person who could put up with him and might have been deaf.
So there you go. That's
Yeah, exactly. In 1994, he had a heart attack and was hospitalized for quadruple coronary artery bypass surgery. From 2010, he received treatment for clinical depression. I think that diagnosis came 70 years too late, to be honest with you. I think he
Yeah.
probably needed that when he was in his youth.
You know, it just sounds like the man just had a broken heart his entire
For
life.
sure. Yeah, and like so much unresolved stuff, but because he was the silent generation, he's like, I'm going to be silent about my problems, but I'm also going to punch everyone and call people a cunt. So,
Yeah.
that was basically his way of dealing with what was probably clinical depression for 70 years, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's a
It's
long time to go without a diagnosis. I mean, I thought
holding on.
waiting 3 years for a diagnosis of Crohn's disease was bad. This guy has been
Yeah.
angry for 70 fucking years.
70 years of white knuckling his way
I'm
through
gonna
life.
fucking punch somebody. I'm going to divorce you. This was a mistake.
To be fair, you said he was 40 something and she was 19. I couldn't be
Yeah.
around a 19-year-old for 8 months,
I
let
know,
alone
yeah.
married to one.
Exactly, yeah. I thought that would have been the one that would have lasted 7 weeks. It's like, oh my God, I've stopped drinking. Where am I? Oh my God, I'm married to you now. On October 10th, 2014, Ellison had a stroke. Although his speech and cognition were unimpaired, he suffered paralysis on his right side, for which he was expected to spend several weeks in physical therapy before being released from the hospital. Harlan Ellison died in his sleep at home in Los Angeles in the morning of June 28th, 2018. His literary estate is currently executed by Babylon 5 creator J. Michael Straczynski. So the guy behind Babylon 5 looks after his works, his house, his estate, everything. So
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool because it's in good hands. This is a guy who would have respected his work. Therefore, he'll make sure it's treated with appropriate respect. So
yeah, it's not like Warner Brothers got a hold of it or some shit.
Jesus, could you imagine?
Hallmark's
His
got
zombie corpse would have risen from the grave and tried to kill them all. So now I'm going to go. So that was, for me, that was kind of brief. The next section is going to be equally as long, and it's the most important part of his life. Controversies and disputes. Section 1, temperament. Ellison had a reputation for being abrasive and argumentative. He generally agreed with this assessment, and a dust jacket from one of his books described him as possibly the most contentious person on earth. That's from one of his books. They were like, this guy's a prick, but enjoy reading his book.
Way to go, marketing.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart. It's like, he's got a reputation. Lean into it. Ellison filed numerous grievances and attempted lawsuits. As part of a dispute about fulfillment of a contract, he once sent 213 bricks to a postage due, followed by a dead gopher via fourth-class mail.
What's the significance of the gopher?
I have he has a flair for the dramatic.
He's just like, fuck you, here's a gopher.
Here's a dead gopher and a bunch of bricks.
Dude, the bricks I get. You send it postage due, that's heavy. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. Also, bricks are useful. So there's always some upside for them. You know?
Yeah.
In an October 2017 piece in Wired. Oh, it was Wired. Sorry, I thought I was trying to read that wrong. Ellison was dubbed Sci-Fi's most controversial figure, basically because you can't write an article calling one person a prick, especially if they are likely to sue you. So you call them controversial. At Stephen King's request, Ellison provided a description of himself in his writing in Dance Macabre. My work is foursquare for chaos. I spend my life personally and my work professionally keeping the soup boiling. Gadfly is what they call you when you're no longer dangerous. I much prefer troublemaker, malcontent, desperado. I see myself as a combination of Zorro and Jiminy Cricket. My stories go out from there and raise hell. From time to time, some denigrate or critique my umbrage will say of my work, he only wrote that to shock. I smile and nod precisely. He knows exactly who he is.
Well,
And,
see, yeah.
yeah.
I'm liking him more and more, man.
He's like, I'm an arsehole and I don't care. I'm not going to change. And now let's get on to him and Gene Roddenberry nearly beating each other to death. Ellison repeatedly criticized how Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry and others rewrote his original script for the 1967 episode The City on the Edge of Forever. Despite his objections, Ellison kept his own name on the script instead of using Cordwainer Bird. He had something like 25 aliases, and some of them are like Bob Evans or Jim Jeffries, or like not that Jim Jeffries, but like a bunch of other like. But then he's got names like Inglethorpe Wengelholm and stuff like that. Like he's got a bunch of weird aliases, and he was just like, "Yeah, I just did it because I thought it was funny." Yeah. Ellison's original script was first published in the 1976 anthology Six Science Fiction Plays, edited by Roger Elwood. The aired version was adapted for the Star Trek photo novel series in 1977. Apparently, that's worth a small fortune now. So if you've got an original copy of that in your attic somewhere, sell that shit. You'll make a fortune.
Go dig around.
Yeah. In 1995, Borderlands Press published The City on the Edge of Forever with nearly 300 pages, comprising an essay by Ellison, 4 versions of the teleplay, and 8 afterwards contributed by other parties. So people saying, this is really important, this is a great episode of television, blah, blah, blah. He greatly expanded the introduction for the paperback edition, in which he explained what he called fatally inept treatment. He's so fucking intense. Both versions of the script won awards. Ellison's original script won the 1968 Writers Guild Award for Best Episodic Drama in Television, while the shooting script won the 1968 Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. So he won so many awards, like Saturn Awards, just like I couldn't even list them. It's like there's 50 or 60 of them. No Oscars, Emmys, Grammys. None of that, Golden Globes, but like all of the other independent, smaller, like he's won everything. It's kind of amazing.
So. Right. Well, those other ones are just never mind.
Yeah, they're just like slap on the back. There you go. Well done. You're very clever. On March 13th, 2009, Ellison sued CBS Paramount Television, seeking payment of 25% of net receipts from merchandising, publishing, and other income from the episode since 1967. The suit also names the Writers Guild of America for allegedly failing to act on Ellison's behalf. On October the 23rd, 2009, Variety magazine reported that a settlement had been reached. He got shitloads of money. Don't know how much, but we know he got shitloads of money. So I, although I'm not a huge fan of Dave Chappelle at the moment, I kind of wish he'd done that with Comedy Central, because Harlan Ellison did, and he got paid. So,
yeah,
get your residuals, people. Do not be held back. Vietnam opposition and Agicon. Ellison was among those who in 1968 signed an anti-Vietnam War advertisement in Galaxy Science Fiction. In 1969, Ellison was a guest of honor at Texas A&M University's first science fiction convention, Agicon, where he reportedly referred to the university's corps of cadets as America's next generation of Nazis. He just can't help himself.
God.
In Texas. Inspired in part by the continuing Vietnam War. Although the university was no longer solely a military school from 1965 onwards, it had changed. The student body was predominantly made up of cadet members. Between Ellison's anti-military remarks and a food fight that broke out in the ballroom of the hotel where the gathering was held, so he instigated a food fight.
To be fair, has a food fight ever been horrible and violent? It's always fun
No.
and good-natured.
It is, unless you slip, in which case you might pull your groin, but that's about the limit of,
Yeah.
According to Ellison in 2000, the food fight actually started in Denny's because the staff disappeared and they could not get their check. The
I've been
school's
there.
administration almost, yeah, I've been there. The school's administration almost refused to approve the science fiction convention the next year, and no guest of honor was invited for the next 2 AgiCons. However, Ellison was subsequently invited back as a guest of honor for AgiCon 5, The Next Generation, 1974. I'm joking. Wow. There's a whole section here on the Last Dangerous Visions. So the Last Dangerous Visions, or TLDV, the 3rd volume of Ellison's anthology series, was originally announced for publication in 1973, but had not been published as of 2002. 2022. Still not been published. Nearly 150 writers, many now dead, submitted works for the volume. In 1993, Ellison threatened to sue the New England Science Fiction Association for publishing himself in Anchoron, a short story written by Cordwainer Smith. That's one of his aliases, and originally sold to Ellison for the anthology by his widow. Later, they reached an amicable settlement after it was revealed that the story contract had expired, allowing them to legally acquire it for publication, which, that's kind of out of that. British science fiction author Christopher Priest criticized Ellison's editorial practices in an article entitled "The Book on the Edge of Forever," that's actually quite a clever name.
Got him.
Yeah, and later expanded it into a book. Priest documented a half a dozen unfulfilled promises by Ellison to publish TLDV within a year of the statement. Priest claims that he submitted a story at Ellison's request, which Ellison retained for several months until Priest withdrew the story and demanded that Ellison return the manuscript. Ellison was incensed by the book of The Edge of Tomorrow and, personally or by proxy, threatened Priest on numerous occasions after its publication. And we're not just saying, oh, he's about to, he threatened to kill him a few times.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he's a bit mad. In November 2020, the executor of the Harlan Ellison estate, the creator of Babylon 5, announced on Patreon that he would be proceeding with the final preparations for the publication of TLDV, with the proceeds to go to the Harlan and Susan Ellison Trust. The book was expected to be published in April 2021, as a significant publisher had expressed interest. Christopher Priest was unimpressed, saying that the guy behind the publishing was in some sort of enviable position. In the same unenviable position as Trump's caddy.
Ooh.
Yeah, he did not like Harlan Ellison at the end, but as an experienced professional would possibly work something out. I don't think you're going to after you said some shit like that, man. Yeah, he added, I kind of lost interest in all those years ago. Ellison clearly did too, along with everyone else. Although I gather he went on with his magical thinking if anyone else asked, he was going to deliver it. Many of the stories were withdrawn because Ellison acted like a dick. That's an understatement. Of the ones that remain, most of them are by writers who are now deceased, so the rights have expired and the estates would have to be traced. A lot of the writers have disowned their stories as juvenile or outdated, or simply because Ellison acted like a dick. He does not like Harlan Ellison, even after he's dead. Despite early hopes of 2021 release, it's still not come out. An October 2021 progress report revealed that the book was still in preparation and had not been shipped to publishers yet. And here we are, still not been published. And this is a year and a half later. So
I wonder if it's coming out. It's like Top Gun. It's like the second Top Gun.
I think it's only going to come out when Harlan Ellison's descendants have passed away at this point. It's been in production for 50 fucking years. That's kind of crazy. Now let's get on to his iRobot controversy. This is fucking hilarious.
He took on Isaac?
No, he was a friend of Isaac's, but everyone else got it. Shortly after the release of Star Wars, Ben Roberts contracted Ellison to develop a script based on Isaac Asimov's iRobot short story collection for Warner Brothers. That's not a combination made in heaven at all. Harlan Ellison and Warner Brothers, this is going to end badly. Ellison and Asimov had been long-time friends, so Ellison may be presumed to have attached particular significance to the project. He was well into it. Like, he really wanted to make it good. In a meeting with the head of production at Warner Brothers, Robert Shapiro, Ellison concluded that Shapiro was commenting on the script without having read it and accused him of having the intellectual and cranial capacity of an artichoke.
That's legit.
Which is a great insult. Holy shit.
I'm using it.
Yeah, absolutely. Shortly afterwards, Ellison was dropped from the project. There's a shocker. Without Ellison, the film came to a dead end because subsequent scripts were unsatisfactory to potential directors. So they just kept him on, even though just put him in a room. Let him write. Right. You know, yeah. He's a writer. He just needs a window and some water and a place to sleep. Just let this man write. After a change in studio heads, Warner Brothers allowed Ellison's script to be serialized in Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine and published in book form. The 2004 film I, Robot, starring Will Smith, has no connection with Ellison's script. No shit. I think it would have been a better film. Although I do like the performance of the guy who played Sonny, the robot. He's a really good actor. My names are really not working with me tonight.
I'm never good at them, so I am no assistance to you, sir.
But like he was in Firefly. He was the pilot in Firefly. He's done a bunch of stuff over the years. That actor.
Oh man.
Yeah, he's Alan Tudyk. There we go. Tudyk, or whatever his name. He is such a good actor, and he played Sonny in I, Robot, which I didn't know until very recently. I was like, well, that makes sense. He was also in the Rogue One film, where he was the robot in Rogue One, which is awesome. Yeah, very, very good actor. Doesn't just do comedy, but other than that, no connection of amazing stuff to Harlan Ellison's work. Allegations of assault on Charles Platt. In 1985, Ellison allegedly publicly assaulted author and critic Charles Platt at the Nebula Awards banquet. He got pissed and punched someone at a luncheon.
Platt
did not, because it's Harlan Ellison. He punches people. Platt did not pursue legal action against Ellison, and the two men later signed a non-aggression pact. You know, like the kind of thing Germany and Russia did during the Second World War. Because
you can do that as a person?
Apparently so.
Okay,
the non-aggression pact promised never to discuss the incident again, nor to have any contact with one another. Platt claims that Ellison often publicly boasted about the incident. That sounds 100% true. That's Harlan Ellison's move.
Surprised he didn't, when anybody asked him, say, well, talk shit, get hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Apparently he went into vast detail about the fight. He's like, I missed with a swift left, but I hit an uppercut. He
had color commentary on his own fight. Good
basically, stuff. Yeah. Now, 2006 Hugo Awards ceremony. Ellison was presented with a special committee award at the 2006 Hugo Awards ceremony. When Ellison got to the podium, presenter Connie Willis asked him, "Are you going to be good?" That was her opening gambit to Harlan Ellison. When she asked the question a second time, so the crowd laughed. She said, "Are you going to be good?" And the crowd laughed. I think that set him off. When asked a second time if he would behave, Ellison shoved the microphone in his mouth and started making gargling noises. Just go on the microphone. He then placed. This is where it gets weird. Well, kind of bad. He placed his hand on her breasts during an embrace. Ellison subsequently complained that Willis refused to acknowledge his apology. He might be mad. Like, he might be genuinely mad. He's an old, crazy man at this point.
Well,
can't go around
he walked on stage,
people,
stuck a microphone in his mouth, and grabbed somebody by their titties. That's just, you can't do that.
Basically, he's kind of, are you going to be good? Don't say this to a crazy person. Don't set them off like that. Just, hand him his award and back away, because the fucking Tasmanian devil might go insane in your general direction. Alan Tudyk also played the Joker in Batman, the Brave and the Bold. I did not know that. Versatile actor, really underrated for me. Lawsuits against Fantagraphics. On September the 20th, 2006, Ellison sued comic book and magazine publisher Fantagraphics, stating that they defamed him in the comic books, in their book, Comics as Art, We Told You So. The book recounts the history of Fantagraphics and discussed the lawsuit that resulted from a 1980 Ellison interview with Fantagraphics industry news magazine, The Comics Journal. In this interview, Ellison referred to comic book writer Michael Fleischer, calling him bugfuck and Derango.
That's
amazing.
awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Fleischer lost his libel lawsuit against Ellison. No, sir, he's correct. You are a bugfuck.
Legally.
he lost legally. Legally, he is now defined as a bugfuck. Whatever the fuck that is. On December the 9th, 1986, he lost the case. Ellison, after rereading unpublished drafts of the book that Fantagraphics website, believed that he had been defamed by several anecdotes related to the incident. Just so you know, guys, sorry, I think Derek's camera is having a bit of a moment.
I'm broken.
I think you're frozen.
Oh no.
That's okay.
Well, now I'm AM.
Now you're a talking bubble. Harlan Ellison would love this moment. Ellison basically sued the magazine. He sued in the Superior Court of the State of California in Santa Monica. Fantagraphics attempted to have the lawsuit dismissed. In their motion to dismiss, Fantagraphics argued that the statements were both their personal opinions and generally believed to be true anecdotes. I mean, if you're calling Harlan Ellison an arsehole, I don't think many people are going to argue with you. Pernicious Rose. Oh no, yeah, it's still not quite fixed. Derek, if you want to go back out and come back in again, yeah, there we go. So this is what happens when we have a technology fail, everyone. I get the full screen. It's mine now. I get to take control. So if anyone's listening to this in the podcast afterwards, Derek's had to leave the lobby, and he will be coming back in. But I don't want to continue this without him until he's here. Thank you so much for joining us so far. This does happen with technology sometimes. I blame the internet. Maybe has taken over, and we're in real trouble. But yeah. Welcome to the chat. Toasterzoid, Pernicious Rose, thank you for joining us, guys. It's been great. I can't believe I'm having to vamp. Add to stream. Let's see if Derek works. Derek!
Hey, what did I miss?
I vamped. That's all you missed, really, okay, buddy. I filled the time, so it's okay. Sorry, let me carry on with the thing. So the lawsuit against Fantagraphics, who basically called him an arsehole. On February 12th, 2007, the presiding judge ruled against Fantagraphics' anti-slap motion for dismissal. Ellison claimed that the litigation had been resolved pending removal of all references to the case from their website. No money or apologies changed hands in the settlement, as posted on August 17th, 2007. This man loves a good fight. Loves it. Fight him in the law courts.
And physical.
Yeah. And now we'll move on to an entire section of itself, copyright lawsuits. In 1980, a lawsuit against ABC and Paramount Pictures, Ellison and Ben Bover claimed that the TV series Future Cop was based on the short story Brillo, winning a $337,000 judgment. It doesn't sound like Future Cop lasted that long.
Never heard of it.
Nope. Must have just been like a short thing, and then I'm sure once they got sued, that was the end of that. This is the big one, though. Ellison alleged that James Cameron's film The Terminator drew from material from an episode of the original Outer Limits, which Ellison had scripted, called Soldier. And obviously we know about I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream. You know, AI becomes sentient, destroys humanity, takes over.
Right.
It's basically the opening to Terminator, yeah. And then he took elements of Soldier, which is future soldier man gets sent back in time to kill someone. Yeah, it's two things have just been squeezed together, and yeah, striking similarities. Hemdale, the production company, and the distributor Orion Pictures settled out of court for an undisclosed sum and then added a credit to the film which acknowledged Ellison's work, so he won. This isn't just on the James Cameron front. Now, James Cameron is a great director. He made one of my favorite films of all time, Aliens, which is apparently an allegory for the Vietnam War, which as a child I didn't get. I was just like, holy shit, this film's amazing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
As not a child. I had no idea.
Apparently, yeah, because like these like overconfident American soldiers go in undermanned and underprepared, and they face this like enemy that comes from everywhere, and there's just wave after wave of them, and they just can't stop them, and they don't know what to do, and they panic, and they essentially lose but get out with their lives, sort of thing. So that's like people have been like, oh, it's the Vietnam War.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, I kind of James Cameron. I like his work. I don't particularly like his attitude. He's kind of an asshole. I have sympathy for him on the set of Aliens because the British crew were not great to work with. They were like, oh, 15 minutes, time for a tea break. And he's like, you do this 4 times a fucking hour. Can we get to work, please? But yeah, James Cameron does like to pinch from people. Like, I'm going to take inspiration from Harlan Ellison. Is basically you take the entire plot of your breakthrough film, right,
Yeah.
from 2 of Harlan Ellison's works. And for anyone out there who is a prog rock fan, because my dad is a huge like Yes and Jethro Tull fan,
Okay.
loves them. If you ever see album art covers of Yes, the band, like a prog rock band, the check out the album covers and the album artwork. It bears a striking resemblance to pretty much everything that you see in Avatar. And yeah, if you check out the artist who's behind the covers, because he's produced like loads of books over the years of his works, those books are basically the storyboard for Avatar. And he sued James Cameron. He didn't win, but if you look at them, like there's so many like floating things, and it's so similar. I'm like, he definitely pinched them.
See, that's messed up too, because he's probably like, well, you should be flattered. I was influenced by you. No, fucker,
Yeah.
you took the story and you put it together and you made some shit.
I know. And like, if you're influenced by someone and you acknowledge that, that's fine. You just kind of chuck him a credit and a bit of pay. You know, that's,
Yeah.
I think outright stealing someone's work and then giving them a credit afterwards because they threaten to sue you is a bit much. So James Cameron, one of the greatest film directors of all time, bit of a prick, sometimes potentially steals things. Anyway, moving on. James, we love you. Please don't sue us. We haven't got any money. Cameron objected to this acknowledgement and has since labeled Harlan Ellison's claim a nuisance suit, which I don't think it is. I think it's pretty legitimate as a claim against. Some accounts of the settlement state that another Outer Limits episode written by Ellison, Demon with a Glass Hand, 1964, was also claimed to have been plagiarized by the film, but Ellison stated that the Terminator was not stolen from Demon with a Glass Hand. It was a ripoff of my other Outer Limits script, Soldier. He's making sure. This is a cool lawsuit. This is one of the better ones. In 1983, Marvel Comics released The Incredible Hulk number 286, entitled Hero, written by Bill Mantlo. 3 issues later, Marvel put up a letter claiming that Mantlo adapted Soldier for use as a Hulk story, but they forgot to credit Ellison and had it pointed out by readers. So yeah. In actuality, then editor-in-chief Jim Shooter signed off on the story, not having seen the Outer Limits episode it was based on, and not realizing that Mantlo had deliberately copied it wholesale, just plagiarized the shit out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. The day the issues went to stands, he was contacted by a raging Harlan Ellison, who calmed down when Shooter immediately realized the error and admitted it. Although he could have claimed hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages, which Harlan Ellison kind of liked to do, I think he must have remembered his comic writing roots, because he only requested the same payment that Mantlo got for the story. So he was like, just give me a writer's fee, which certainly not in the hundreds of thousands of dollars territory for Marvel in the 1980s. And he also said, I want a lifetime subscription to every Marvel publication.
Hey, that's legit. That's kind of a cool settlement.
That's a really, like, as far as like if you find, I always feel like if you get into a settlement, like you find, like you go to a chain, a food place, and you find like I don't know, say a human finger or some horrible shit in your food, you'd be like, yeah, I'll sue you. Maybe give me free. Like, I know you've been put off by the food, but like, give me free food for life. I'd probably take that over like a financial settlement, to be honest.
Well, yeah. What are the odds you're going to get another finger?
I know, exactly.
I would hope pretty low.
It's kind of cute of Harlan Ellison, but also a part of me is like, there's no way he's been this benevolent for no reason. I feel like he got that subscription because part of him was probably reading literally every single story that they published and thinking, I wonder if I can sue for this. I wonder if this is similar to my story. Because
To
he's
be
kind of
fair, he should have to look after them after catching them straight
oh yeah,
out.
fuck
So
yeah, yeah. That point, yeah, you never know who's gonna rip off your work, really. On April 24th, 2000, Ellison sued Stephen Roberts for posting 4 stories in the news group alt.binaries.ebook without authorization, so basically a fan forum. The other defendants were AOL and Remark, so Remark Q, an internet service provider who owned servers hosting the news group. Ellison alleged that he had failed to halt copyright infringement in accordance with the notice and takedown procedure outlined in the 1998 Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Robertson and Remark first settled with Ellison, and then AOL likewise settled with Ellison in June 2004 under conditions that were not made public. Since those settlements, Ellison initiated action or takedown notices against more than 240 people who have allegedly distributed his writing on the internet, saying, "If you put your hand in my pocket, you're dragging back 6 inches of bloody stump."
okay, that's violent. He's like a violent Lars Ulrich, but for writing.
Basically, yeah. I will sue you. I don't care how poor you are. I'm taking you to court. And that's the last thing. I mean, he died in 2014. That is the life of Harlan Ellison. And I mean, another one of my favorites to research and write because he's so idiosyncratic and enigmatic. It's a bit like, oh God, who did we cover? Rick James. It reminds me a little bit of Rick James. There's the story is so fantastical you can't honestly believe it's true, but it is.
Right. Yeah. I don't know.
So what do you
He
make of
feels like Sheldon to me from Big Bang Theory.
little bit? Yeah, there's like Johnny Rotten from the Sex Pistols, Mike Tyson. There's a
little
bit
bit
of
of Sam
Tyson
Kinison in there.
Yes, Sam Kinison for sure. Oh my God, like the righteous indignation of like a Sam Kinison, and like who's the other famous comedian from that age who kind of predated Sam Kinison? He died of cancer, I think, very very young. What's his name? Bill. Anyway, he's basically every rebellious spirit you can think, combined with this incredible talent for story making and the most poetic insults any human being has ever come up in history. So I'd like your opinion on Harlan Ellison. I'm glad I could surprise you with this one, actually.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, and
Yeah.
I feel stupid not knowing the name, but like at least I know the work. At least I recognize some of it, and
yeah.
God, I don't know. I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I kind of just wanted to tell the story because, like, he is an idiot in a certain sense. Like, he just can't stop suing people. He can't stop getting divorced. He just constantly gets into fights. But he is this remarkable artist who, to his dying day, was sending published works back to his fucking lecturer in university. So
see, and I feel like he was just a misunderstood, heartbroken, depressed, violent, awesome writer guy that I wish that I could be like.
I know. The notoriety for his works it's kind of one of those things. I'm really pleased that he was alive to see the kind of the stature that his works had been kind of put in, because so many great writers and artists don't always see how influential they become. We talk about Vincent van Gogh or like H.P. Lovecraft to a certain extent as well. Like the influence these people had or have after their life is immense, almost immeasurable. Like they influence entire genres of artistry. And Harlan Ellison was lucky enough to see that come to fruition. One of his best mates was the guy who created Babylon 5, who no doubt was influenced by these terrifying stories that he wrote when he was, a young angry writer or a different angry writer. So, yeah.
Well,
so what's your take?
God, I honestly, I don't even know where I should put him on the rating. I mean, just, I don't know. I respect an honest asshole.
Yes, and he was.
So, man, I don't want to hurt your feelings here either, and
No,
go
I don't
real
mind
low.
low scores. I'm all about the story.
Well, I think the story is high. So for the
Yeah.
marks on the story, I loved learning about. Uh, why am I drawing a blank?
Harlan Ellison, yeah.
Harlan Ellison, and just for that, that's a high score. But as far as him being an idiot, he was an
Yeah.
asshole and a super talented writer,
Yeah.
and wrote amazing things. And for that, I'll go a 65.
Yeah. I'm happy with the 65. I kind of I want him included on here because there's the potential that Harlan Ellison, had he been maybe more agreeable, maybe he would have seen more success. But then at the same time, you think, if he'd been more agreeable and seen more success, would we have gotten the kind of the fiery creation of the work that we get? Because there's something about remaining slightly under the radar that you can create intense, completely personal stories and artistry that you maybe can't do if you've got the glare of a giant publisher or a giant movie studio on you. You
Yeah,
know, so
if you get the bastardized version of your story that is,
yeah.
God, I don't know if you're watching the Offer about the making of The Godfather and stuff, but there's an
No.
exec that's on
Oh,
Paramount,
I
Paramount
want to
Plus.
watch that.
It's awesome. It's an amazing series
Wow.
on the making of The Godfather and that whole
Okay. Of
story and the connections there. But
course.
um, I don't know where the hell I was going with that. I just wandered right off in the middle of
Mario
talking. I forgot what I
Puzo,
was doing.
maybe? Was it the writer of the Godfather books, Mario Puzo? Was it something to do with his work, maybe?
Nah, never mind.
Anyway, no,
There goes that.
I'll happily take a recommendation because we've just finished a documentary called Keep Sweet, Pray, and something about oh yeah, Netflix. It's about this Mormon, not Mormon. What's in Utah?
Mormons.
Oh, they're Mormons, are they? Okay, okay. So it's like an offshoot of the Mormons who kept the thing about polygamy.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
Warren Jeffs in them.
Warren Jeffs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So there's a documentary about that. I knew nothing. I mean, I knew about like Mormons and I knew about the peripheral thing like years ago. They were okay with polygamy and stuff. I had no idea about this offshoot and how fucking horrible they were. It's basically North Korea. This guy creates North Korea in Texas. You know,
Yikes! Good
crazy.
grief!
So yeah, watch
Now I
that.
feel like an asshole. When I was younger, I played in a band called Warren and the Jeffs, and it was based on that dick.
Oh, okay. Well, watch this
It was a punk
documentary.
band.
People do stuff. When I was younger, I was in a band called Vince and the Kwang Chow, and that was purely because we had a guy from Canada called Vince, and me, him, and the other guys from the band always used to eat in the Kwang Chow, so we were called Vince and the Kwang Chow. But but yeah, no, I don't feel too bad. I think everyone does stuff like that when they're a kid. But yeah, definitely get out and watch that documentary. North Korea and Texas is just Texas. That is not true. Texas is nice, except some parts where they're a bit angry. Anyway, yeah. So let's leave Texas alone. I know a lot of Texans. They're all wonderful, lovely people. I also know some Texans who are hardcore Republicans. We won't go there.
I just know it takes forever to drive through.
It does. I had a piece of shit car like that as well. That's the response people say. When you're in Texas and you drive, you just keep on driving. It's like, yeah, I had a piece of shit car like that one time as well. So yeah, that's Harlan Ellison, one of the angriest human beings in history, but also one of the most influential authors of the last 50 years, probably.
Oh yeah.
Certainly in terms of popular culture references. And sorry, who was the guy who owned the sweatshop again?
It's Kil Soo, and I'm now Lee, KilSoolee.
Kil Soo Lee. That's yeah, that arsehole. So
333 on the letters, so I guess that's half evil.
yes, I also feel like if Kil Soo Lee, sorry, and why am I apologizing? He's in prison. And if he'd ever been in a situation where Harlan Ellison had met him, and like Harlan Ellison had been aware of the circumstances of what he was doing, I think Harlan Ellison might have beaten him to death. Possibly. Do you imagine? Because he was all for civil rights. Like that's one thing. He was a hardcore campaigner, and if he'd seen people basically being kept prisoner in a sweatshop, he'd have murdered the owner.
He'd have taken one of them plastic pipes and shoved it right somewhere on that Kil
Pretty
Soo
much.
Lee.
Yeah. Oh God. Now I'm thinking of a Harlan Ellison versus Sweatshop owner death match in my head. That would have been really cool. I'd have definitely been behind ancient, angry Harlan Ellison in that fight. My God. So that's our show for this week. Still no pickle bubble base. Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know what this is.
I don't.
Okay, that's okay.
I think we just took a shot.
Yeah, I feel like I dropped something.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, guys. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks with our next episode. And until then, Derek, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everybody. And we will see you again soon. Take care now. Bye.